Video game remakes are very controversial. Some are good, some are bad. For some reason, we're making one for Horizon Zero Dawn. Couldn't tell you why. A lot of people have been arguing that they're poorly done, they're just unnecessary, and I mostly agree. I do think some remakes just have no reason to be made. I'm looking at Last of Us, obviously. But I also think it's still a good time. It's a great way to revive the original creator's intent from the hardware limitations we had in the past or just stuff we've learned now. And it's a good way to bring older stories to light for newer players. As somebody that personally plays a lot of retro games, it's been hard to play through a lot of them, even though I know the stories are great, because the gameplay is just super outdated. So we need more gacha games. I decided to basically compile a list of games that I think actually do deserve a remake, so that, you know, we can maybe stop making them for shitty games and make games that actually need it. Maybe this will point CEOs in the right direction. Probably not. Maybe we'll get a Fortnite remake next year. Also, just a quick, we all know this, but I'm just gonna say it. A lot of these games probably can't be remade. I don't care about licensing issues. Obviously, there's a lot of issues involved. This is simply a list of the games that I think should be remade as a gamer. I don't, logistics aside, okay? Yeah, I know, starting pretty strong with Xenogears. A lot of people don't know about this game, or at least I didn't know about it until I looked up like PlayStation 2 classics, you know? Xenogears was this like huge 2-disc turn-based game with an awesome 90s anime art style. I can't stress enough how much I want this art style to return if they do remake it, or just more games in general having it. I love this aesthetic. It's very nostalgic. But yeah, the game had this really cool art style, and despite its age, the unique art style and the really cool moves that happen whenever you're in the combat, even though it is turn-based, it's really interesting. And also they have these really badass Neon Genesis mech suits that are called the Xenogears. All that kept me interested throughout the whole playthrough. It also helps that a lot of the dialogue and the characters really do hold up, which is really rare for these older RPGs. The main reasons I would remake it are obviously that it's super dated. Most people aren't going to play through this game. It's really old. And also there's some issues where it was rushed near the end. You can tell with this 2 not having nearly as much like combat and stuff, and I just think it would be a great way for these people to finally have this story brought into the, you know, mainstream. And the story could honestly be one of the greats if it was remade and fully realized. The Way of the Samurai is easily one of my favorite series from the PS2, and it's definitely one of the coolest concepts I've seen for a video game. You customize a samurai, you can unlock sick gear, you have multiple combat styles depending on the sword, kind of like Ghost, and also you make drastic decisions with branching dialogue choices, and you'll see certain elements of a story you wouldn't see if you had gone to a certain area in the map at a certain time in a certain location. It's really cool how the story's done. There's like 8 different ways each one can play out. You can be a bad guy, good guy, neutral. Each series brought something new to the table. There was that bad mobile game, which whoever made that just stopped. Personally, the 3rd game was my favorite. I love the setting and everything in that one. But if I had to choose one, I would choose the 1st game to be remade, because it has the perfect simple setup. You just play as the nameless samurai, just a small town. And I think with modern improvements that we have nowadays, I think a game like this could be really good, especially because the samurai genre is kind of lacking. I mean, we have Ghost of Tsushima, if that's how you say the name, which is very good. And we also have what Ubisoft is doing now, which, I mean, technically might not even be a samurai game. It's not going to play like a good one. We all know that. I just think these kinds of games are very cool, and I wish we would see more like it. So please bring back Way of the Samurai if at all possible.
Enemy terminated. Proceed to next sector.
Yep, we all knew a Star Wars game would be on the list. Now, don't get me wrong, if I was to choose only one Star Wars game to be remade ever, it would have to be KOTOR. Everybody knows it. Those games are classics. It's one of my favorites ever made. But that game's already confirmed to be remade, even though it's kind of not happening, but also is. And I'm not going to have confirmed remakes on the list. So choosing any Star Wars game besides that one, I would choose Republic Commando. The game is sick. I mean, it has like the cool squad tactics of like the Mass Effect games, mixed with this darker undertone of like the Clone Wars TV show. I like when Star Wars goes grittier and darker than what it usually does with the movies, and this kind of story would be really good, especially now that single player games are coming back with Star Wars. You know, we had Jedi Survivor, which I don't like Souls games, but it's fine. Outlaws is coming out very soon, could be good. It's Ubisoft, so maybe not, but I'm hopeful. I just think this game would be really good to see redone and hopefully revived, so that way we could see the ending that we were supposed to get with the second one, because they ended up handling a lot of the characters' fates in the end of this through like comics, and then not anymore because Disney, and then again with like cameos. I don't like that. I want to see a full-blown sequel to this game, and the only way we should get it is with a full-blown remake of this one first. Oh man, so despite what a lot of people say, Jade Empire was actually really well received when it came out. The problem is it's not really remembered that way, and it wasn't nearly as successful as Star Wars. So the game basically almost destroyed BioWare financially. But we're not going to talk about all that BioWare nonsense. If you know BioWare RPGs, you know the gist of this one. You played as the Chosen One, you have to stop the bad guy, and you recruit a bunch of baddies before you do. It has some really cool, fun mechanics because they were actually bridging the gap between KOTOR and Dragon Age at the time, and it's also martial arts, which is very rare in these kinds of games. It was really cool. You could choose between doing like a spirit monk or like a staff, fire. The gameplay is really fun. I went back and replayed it again this year, and it holds up really well. The problem is that it has a lot of buggy issues, and it's really dated. Everybody knows that. It's got BioWare's like weaker writing in their portfolio, besides the last two games they've made, but I would really like to see a new studio be given this chance to remake this game, or at least just make something similar to it, because the whole premise and the character designs and the art style, the little mini games with the ship, it was all just really cool, and I'd like to see it brought back. Yeah, we're already speaking of BioWare, so a lot of people are confused, I'm sure, because they think that Dragon Age Origins needs the remake out of all of them. I disagree. I'm a little biased. Origins is my favorite game ever made, but Origins is kind of fine. Like, don't get me wrong, Origins is very dated, but the combat's still fun for people that like it. The art style, okay, I'll give you that one, but the music and the writing and the acting and the way the game was set up, it's all very good. It will always hold up, in my opinion, and that's just not the same case for 2. You know, like Origins, you couldn't replace anybody. You couldn't replace any of the writing or the acting, and if it was remade, let's be honest, a lot of choices wouldn't be in the new remake. You know, you couldn't do we all know the one I'm talking about, the demon with the child, you know it. But with 2 was EA's first blunder, you know what I mean? Like, that was the first game BioWare had to deal with EA with. So Mass Effect 2 came out, and then EA got their grips on them with Dragon Age 2 for some reason, and made them rush it. So it's missing a lot of content they wanted to do. There was so much more they wanted to do with Kirkwall and Hawk as a character, and you can feel it with the repetitive like combat and the maps being very limited. The potential behind this game, you should go check it out, because it honestly should have been way better than what it was. I just think it would be good to get a full-blown remake so we get the full story of Hawk, because honestly, Femme Hawk is probably my favorite protagonist in a video game. It's very close. The writing was still fine. It's just the game could use a remake to get all that potential realized. And I know a lot of people would say, like, if they remake it, make it like Origins. That was never going to be the case. EA didn't do that. A lot of people think EA made them do that. The lead designer of Dragon Age 2 originally wanted to make it more like Mass Effect. The audience that played Origins complained about it. They wanted to make it more simple. That was BioWare, not EA. So just wanted to point that out.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, we all know the Resident Evil games, okay? Those are the best remakes in the business, besides 3. I want to see Capcom take that engine, because it really is just magic. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's insane, except for Dragon's Dogma. I want to see them do other IPs that they have. Like, I want to see another one that we'll talk about on this list later on down the line, but mainly Dino Crisis, man. Dino Crisis was such a cool game back in the day. It's very not playable nowadays. I mean, back then it was just cool. I remember being terrified whenever you first, like, find like those torn apart bodies as the chick, and there's dinosaurs. Just a horror dinosaur game is so cool, and to see it in the Resident Evil engine, I don't even have to explain it. It would just be so sick to see them revisit this. A lot of people complain about remakes, but I would much rather have Capcom remake these older games than to make a new horror game. I just feel like they were different. I don't know.
Huh? What a weird customer.
Speaking of Capcom, we'll go ahead and get a Resident Evil game out of the way. A lot of people will say 5 doesn't need a remake, which I agree with. Not because of racism, that's fucking stupid. Resident Evil 4 wasn't racist, and neither is 5. I think 5 is fine. The problem is 5 is also just really good still. I went back and replayed it, and it holds up so well. Like cinematically, the art style, the graphics, the gameplay, it's all still very fine. Obviously they should remake it to match the rest of the universe now, but I think as of now it's still fine. I would also say probably like every Resident Evil game before the remakes could use the remake. Why not? You know what I mean? But if I can only choose one, it's a little out of left field, but I would personally choose my favorite, which is Resident Evil Outbreak. Outbreak was just such a cool experience, man. I mean, you get to play a Resident Evil game in co-op. You know what I mean? It's just, people say co-op sucks and ruins the horror. I say Resident Evil games have never been scary. I've played them all, never been scared. You know what I mean? It's just fun, and I really like the settings and like the bar especially. I just think an Outbreak game would be really good because it let Capcom go into the multiplayer thing that they're wanting to do while also giving us a cool story game. I don't know.
Inmate, back in your cell. Everything's under control.
Oh man, this game was terrifying as a kid, dude. I remember my dad always playing this shit on the PC with like a blue cheap controller for the computer back in the day before Xbox was popular on it. But yeah, these games were sick. It's really surprising that we haven't gotten a new game in this franchise, or at least have it remade, because honestly, horror games are really struggling nowadays. The only good ones are like Outlast, in my opinion. Dead Space Remake was popular, so why not keep this going, even though, you know, Remake wasn't good enough for a sequel apparently. Basically, you played as this like inmate that was potentially framed for killing his family, and you're in this big prison when all of a sudden like these monsters show up and you have to escape, and you get to see like other inmates throughout the playthrough while you're escaping. You can choose good or bad options, like saving someone, killing them, letting them die. It was just really cool because you slowly like unveil like Torque's past. One of the cooler parts was that if you chose like the bad decisions in the game, Torque would actually be revealed to have killed his family at the beginning and he was actually deserving the prison, versus if you chose good options, he would actually have been framed. It was really cool, and I love the aesthetic. I love a prison-based game. I don't know why we don't have any more of these, but like a horror game set in a prison like this with like, I remember the shower scene still. It's a really cool game, and I hope we get to see it again. Okay, so there's a lot of games that need remade. I'm not going to go over everything. There is one big game that I think is the most potential for a remake for money for these guys, but all in all, there's just a lot to cover, and I don't think every game needs a remake. So to go over some honorable mentions of games that I don't really care if they get remade, I just think they would be good ideas for these companies. These honorable mentions are Chrono Trigger. It's a great RPG, and it would just be nice to see it modernized. Parasite Eve was a good horror game. I never played it, so that's why I don't really care, but I've heard it was great. Jujutsu Kaisen, the combat, that game just sucked. Great anime, bad game. And Dead Rising. The only reason that I don't have this on the main list is because Dead Rising still holds up really well. It's very playable today. It's still one of my favorite zombie games. The problem is that the AI is really lacking. It's really bad, and the franchise kind of went in a horrible direction after 2, or even after 1, to be honest with you, and it would just be cool to see it revived, so that's what we're mentioning here. All right, number 1.
Maybe.
Dude, this is an easy layup. How is this not it's got to be in the works, you know what I mean? The Fallout series is very dear to me. I grew up with 3 being like my favorite game whenever I was like 10 years old, or however old I was. Whenever I became an adult, New Vegas became my favorite, obviously, because the writing was so much better. 4 sucked, hated the writing, but I loved the gameplay, and 76 was 76. These games were so good, and I would like to be able to play the whole series. The only problem is that the older games are so dated, dude. They're so hard to play. Purists might say otherwise, but as like like a modern gamer, I don't see why I would go back and replay these games when the gameplay is so different than the rest of the series. Even though I know the writing's probably better than the rest, besides New Vegas. Obviously, I do think from what I've played myself that 2 was better writing-wise, but I do think 1 has the better themes and ending. It's just such a cool ending, and I think it would be smart with the season 2 of the show to, you know, have them bring in a remake of the first game so people could get started on the series. I think it would be great, and it would let me enjoy the games all the way through without, you know, the hiccup of the horrible old gameplay. So yeah, I don't know, that's all there was for this video. Just games that I think should be remade. Plenty of games need remakes, plenty of games don't need it, and it's obviously just, you know, there's plenty of conversations to be had about remakes. I personally do think that remakes should deserve Game of the Year. People disagree with me. I think Resident Evil 4 was a good contender. I think it feels so much different. It's not like they just took the old game and like remastered it. They made a whole new game just with like way less work. But I think it's fine. Remakes are great if you're doing them right and for the right reasons, and I think that's the main problem, is that companies are really doing it for the right reasons. But whatever, I'm yapping. That was the video. Talk about what games you think needs remade in the comments, I guess. Who knows, maybe someone will point something out and I'll be like, oh yeah, shit, that's way better. So whatever, I have work in the morning, so I'm gonna go, so bye. Yo, if you liked the video, or honestly even if you didn't, it'd be cool if you liked it. Also, if you want more videos like this in the future, you can subscribe down below. Alright, well, I should go.